aftermath of a missile strike by Iran, members of Congress have been reacting and awaiting a briefing to those members.
Indeed. We spoke with several House members. Here's what they had to say.
The briefing won't be until 1 o'clock today.
Oh, well, there we go.
And the president will be giving his remarks at 11 o'clock. And what I'm hoping this president does is outline where he plans on going from here. Clearly, this was avoidable, and he was prompted to take this action, and it's really unfortunate and very reckless.
What have you seen, or what do you know in terms of the evidence that Soleimani was imminently planning attacks on Americans?
Well, that's just it. We have not heard. Congress was not briefed, and this is the first briefing that his administration is going to give Congress. So that's exactly it. What has been said in the media is all that members of Congress know to date.
And so, Congressman, member of the House Armed Services Committee, you're obviously familiar Al-Assad Air Base. I mean, could you outline for the viewers how important that air base is to the United States and how significant of an attack it was that the Iranians would choose to target it?
Well, it's really unfortunate. I think the biggest concern is the safety of American troops and our diplomats. And certainly the base that was targeted by Iran is of great concern. But we need to make sure that de-escalation occurs and that we don't get into escalating into a war. Nobody wants a war. And again, I'm anxious and curious to hear what this president has to say, because I want to hear him talk about how he's going to get us out of this mess that he's created.
Congressman, tensions have been ratcheting up with Iran for quite a while now. Why didn't Democrats before this point take the opportunity to constrain the president, to alter the AUMF, to make sure that there had to be a vote in Congress before he took this kind of military action?
Well, I think Democrats have been outspoken and have said from back when he took us out of the JCPOA, the nuclear deal with Iran. Keep in mind that there has been no missile attacks by Iran on any of our assets since 2011. And when he took us out of the JCPOA, the nuclear deal, that has led to an escalation by Iran. So clearly this president's erratic policies have certainly lent themselves to where we're at today.
So, Congressman, as a military veteran yourself, what is the lens that you're kind of bringing to this, and what have you spoken to any members of the armed services? How are they feeling generally about the situation currently?
Well, certainly the Armed Services Committee, at least my colleagues on the Democrat side, Chairman Smith, have and continue to articulate great concern and a desire to make sure that we do not escalate into war. This is a situation that could get out of hand quickly, and again, this president's reckless actions are taking us in that direction. So I'm hoping that today we can hear from this president how we are going to avoid war and hear more about the facts that led him to doing what he did. Clearly, previous presidents, both Democrats and Republicans, were advised of this option, and it's an option that they chose not to take because of the implications. This president needs to give more consideration to the safety of our troops, our men and women who are in the front lines, our diplomats, and American safety throughout the world and here in the United States, other than saber rattling and getting us into a war.
The Democratic caucus in the Senate voted nearly unanimously to up sanctions on Iran, helping this administration to ratchet up the pressure and lead to this moment. Was that, in retrospect, the right move?
Absolutely. I think anything that holds this president accountable, and keep in mind that Congress has the responsibility to keep this president accountable. And that's why you saw Senator Kaine move forward with the War Powers resolution that he initiated. And Speaker Pelosi has outlined that in the House, we will be considering a similar resolution in the very near future as well.
Yeah. Well, Congressman, thank you so much for joining us, sharing your insight. We're both also anxiously awaiting the president's address. Appreciate you joining us, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for drawing attention to this important issue.
Absolutely. We're joined by Republican Congressman Jim Banks of Indiana. He's a member of the House Armed Services Committee and Veterans Affairs, deployed to Afghanistan for Operation Enduring Freedom and Freedom Sentinel. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your service.
Great to be with you.
Absolutely. Congressman, so as we stand at the President of the United States set to speak about 15 minutes from now, could you just speak about what you want to hear from the President, and then as a member, of this House committee, and what your knowledge base is regarding all of what has transpired in the last 48 hours?
Well, I think the American people are looking for this president to assure them that he has this situation under control, perhaps talk about where we go from here. How do we contain Iran and their nefarious and evil activities moving forward? I imagine that he will very much be able to do that. I believe, as a member of the Armed Services Committee, as someone who has been following the situation with Iran all 3 years I've been a congressman very closely, this president's wise approach, his restraint toward Iran, has been one that, on one hand, has prevented another endless war in the Middle East. And then on the other hand, this is a president who's been tougher on Iran than certainly what the last administration was. So I imagine his remarks that we're going to hear here shortly, he's going to lay out that approach and articulate it more clearly than maybe what he has before.
Did you view the decision to kill Qasem Soleimani as a dangerous act? Was that concerning to you, both as a member of Congress, but also as someone who served in Afghanistan? I mean, you know the reality of what this looks like, what war looks like, in a way that many Americans, frankly, don't. What was that moment like for you when you learned of that strike?
Well, certainly this has been a long time coming. I mean, this president has made very clear that he will hold the Iranians accountable for their actions. And last week, an American contractor was killed. Our American troops were affected by an attack that killed that American contractor. And Soleimani was one who was directly responsible for that activity. Then his activities in Iraq, coordinating and orchestrating the attacks on our embassy as well. We can't ignore those situations, and that's why no one should be surprised that the president would authorize an action that would hold the Iranians accountable for those actions. It's important to note that once again, since 1979, Iran has been at war with the United States of America. They're the biggest provocateur in the Middle East. They are the largest state sponsor of terrorism around the globe. They are responsible for a number of evil acts, and this president is one who's holding them accountable for that.
Of course we understand that, Congressman. The question here, though, is are your constituents, were they ready, are they ready to go to war, to a hot war against Iran? Because that's what some of these actions could easily have triggered. Look, we stand here today, we don't know what the president's going to say. We know we're very lucky that the Iranian strikes of these military bases in Iraq led to no American casualties. We're very fortunate about that. But this could easily trigger a war that no one wants. Is that price, is that risk really worth it?
I happen to believe it's just the opposite. And I believe that because at the end of the day, there's nothing that we should fear more than Iran obtaining nuclear capabilities, nuclear weapons. And this administration has done far more, especially than the last administration, to prevent Iran from getting there. That's why the maximum pressure campaign
when they're out of the deal,
on Iran's economy is so significant.
Anymore. They have no reason not to
they weren't
continue their
complying
march
with the
to
deal
nuclear
before
weapons.
as well.
They
weren't complying with the deal
sir,
before as well, and this president has pulled out of the deal because of it.
I want to ask you, sir, about the future of the American presence in Iraq. If the president decides, to follow the lead of what the Iraqi government wants, would you support a withdrawal of U.S. forces from Iraq?
Well, I certainly hope not. I mean, I believe the Iraqi people hope that we don't withdraw from Iraq either. I mean, the majority of the Iraqi people know that the United States of America is there to defeat ISIS first and foremost. As a threat to the United States of America, it's in our best interest to maintain a presence there, as well as Afghanistan and other parts of hot spots around the globe. We're there to prevent further attacks on the homeland and to preserve the national security of the United States of America. That's why we're there. But I imagine that the president will have a lot to say in his remarks shortly about our continued presence, specifically in Iraq, and where we go from here.
Great. So thank you so much for joining us, sir. Appreciate it.
Great to be with you.
Absolutely. We'll have more Rising for you right after this.